Hey y'all, just wanted to make a quick video on the topic of getting the Hasbro Destruction Belfyre to properly work with the Takaratomi F gear. So I've been seeing a couple of people trying it out, and I had an idea on how to do it, and they didn't do it the way I did, so I thought I would share my way. So before getting into it, the thing I wanted to do was make sure I wouldn't damage my gears, and I didn't really want to damage this either. So I started looking at how Hasbro has this thing designed. So side by side, it looks very similar to the Takaratomi one. The only thing it's really missing at first glance are these 4 grooves that allow it to sit, or allow the F gear to sit in there and properly lock together. Hasbro decided to put in this thing that pretty much filled in all those gaps. So that is I would say that's the first thing, but then looking at this again, that same mold that they put in there makes the destruction blade perfectly flat along the bottom, whereas the Takaratomi one has this very bumpy design to it. And looking at the F gear, I realized, oh shoot, this is also bumpy on the inside. So more likely than not, if I tried to put this the way it was into this, it wouldn't fit properly because the Takaratomi one was designed properly to handle that. So like looking at it from the side, you see that the bumpy design follows the dynamite blade beautifully. So before I did anything, I went through and carved out the original shape of dynamite into the destruction blade. And you can see that I just went over it with a Sharpie and traced out what I was going to be carving out, and then I grabbed a Dremel and just ground that down until I was happy with the shape. And then after that, I went through with a pocket knife because the bits on the Dremel were a bit too big for this. I dug out the 4 pockets, or the 4 grooves that I would need for the prongs of the F gear. And because I had to go in with a pocket knife, it's not as beautiful as I wanted it to be, but it still functions perfectly well. So if I plop that in there, now you see the Hasbro Destruction now follows. It's not perfect, but it still follows the general shape of the F gear very well. Then looking at the inside, you've got a couple of areas where the prongs of the F gear sit in there beautifully. And over here, you can see I have a little bit too much room in there. So if I were to go back and do this again, that would be something I would do better. But now we have the destruction blade with the F gear in there. And I thought this was going to be it, so I put it together. And of course, to allow this to lock in, you have to put the Belfyre core in first, and then lock it in with the 2 gravity ring. That holds together fairly nicely. Then you can put it all together, and it goes together really nicely. So this was when I was trying to experiment with potential perfect gear destruction Belfyre. So I put it in high mode and ran into my first issue where the core gets in the way of you putting the F gear in. Sorry, that was off camera for a bit. And so basically the core blocks those 4 holes. So started brainstorming, and I got to thinking, what if I put the F gear on there first and then try to do this? Well, the F gear has to be oriented with the blade that way, and with how Hasbro has things designed, this lock has to go into the F gear has to line up with the blade that way, and this lock has to go into that hole. So the F gear can't physically lock in properly that way. So I thought about lining it up that way. And so now it can get into the position it needs to be. But again, I run into an issue where the F gear is getting in the way of the bay locking together. So this is where the final step for the overall mod comes into play. So I used the cheapest destruction Belfyre for this mod. Basically, you have to carve out that wall piece, and what that does is it allows for the F gear to freely move in and out of the way Hasbro has these bays locked together. So then when you try this again, now it can properly lock in with the F gear. And that allows for a high mode destruction Belfyre with the F gear in there. And so you can take this a step further, get it to be perfect, or relatively perfect. I didn't want to damage any of the parts by trying to squeeze the V gear on there. So this is as perfect as I'm going to get it. And I really hope Hasbro comes out with a plastic L gear, because this is, if you see, the Karatomi armors don't sit properly, so that's kind of elevated. And I'm also worried because this isn't actually locked in. So if it takes a really hard hit, that could potentially go flying off, and that would be painful. Potentially painful. So there you have it. This is my version of the Destruction Belfyre mod that allows it to work with the gears. So if y'all found this useful, please let me know. Winnie has come up here to say hi. Everyone say hi to Winnie. Hey, Winnie. Hello. She's about to knock down my whole setup. So, if y'all found this useful, let me know in the comments. And until next time, peace.